Well, hello and welcome to this English lesson about large tools and other equipment. I'm quite excited about this lesson because in this lesson I get to talk about the things that I think are cool. In my shop, I have some of these tools, things like pressure washers and generators and drill presses. And if you like tools, I think you'll like this lesson. I will admit this is kind of a unique lesson, and it might not be exciting for all of you. But if you want to talk about log splitters, you've come to the right place. If you want to learn about jack stands and bandsaws and dust collectors, I will talk about all of those things today. So once again, welcome to this English lesson about large tools and other equipment. I think you will enjoy it. Shop-vac. So we also sometimes call this a wet dry vac. This is a little different than the vacuum cleaner you use in your house. This is a powerful vacuum used for cleaning dirt, dust, and liquids in workshops. We have a shop vac and I love it. The cool thing about a shop vac, it's a vacuum cleaner and you can use it to, you can suck up water, you can suck up like leaves from Jen's plants when she does her bouquet making that fall on the floor. It's just a very, we would say it's like an industrial grade vacuum cleaner. I love our shop vac. Now, shop vac is the name of this kind of wet dry vac, but in English, in my part of the world, it's become the name we use for all of these types of vacuum cleaners. We would simply call it a shop vac, even if it was made by a different company. So a shop vac, a powerful vacuum used for cleaning dust, dirt, and liquids in workshops and in your basement or in your house. You can use it in your garage as well. If you have a little bit of a flood in your house, you can use this to suck up the water. Well, some of it. It only holds like 4 liters or something like that. Scaffolding. So a temporary structure for workers to stand on when building or repairing. So if you need to work on something and it's high up, you could use a ladder. You could use a step ladder. But if you have to work up there for a long period of time, you might want to build a scaffold or what we call scaffolding. We kind of use those two words interchangeably. So I could say he's standing at the top of the scaffold or he's standing at the top of the scaffolding. They've kind of blended the use of the two words. I say scaffolding. That is my normal. If I saw something like this, I would say it is scaffolding. So again, if you need to work on something on the ceiling, if you're like these two people, you might set up some scaffolding, especially if you're going to be up there for a while. A ladder is cool, but scaffolding can be much nicer if you need to spend a lot of time in the air. A vise. A tool that holds objects tightly in place while you work on them. I have a vise on my workbench in my workshop, and it is very handy. You can put something in the vise and then you can tighten it. And then I guess you'd call them the jaws of the vise close. And then you tighten the bar on the end and it holds whatever you have in the vise. Like if I needed to work on these glasses, I could put them in the vise and then the vise would hold them while I work on them. I wouldn't actually do that with glasses, of course. That would be a bit silly. But yes, I love my vise. It is actually, it's quite old. Sometimes in the case of tools, older tools are better. And that's the case as well with my anvil. I have an anvil as well, a heavy metal block used for hammering and shaping metal. The anvil I have, it's when I bought the farm from my mom, it was here. As a kid, I remember my dad, putting in rivets and stuff on the anvil. Whenever you had to, hit metal with a hammer to bend it or shape it, we would use the anvil. So a heavy metal block, a very heavy metal block used for hammering and shaping metal. My anvil is on a big old tree stump. I should actually take a picture of it later today. I should have used a picture of my anvil, but usually an anvil is used with a hammer. So you use it with a hammer and you use it to form metal. Anytime you need to bang something against something heavy, an anvil is a good choice. Tool chest. So I do not have one of these. Now you might be wondering, what is the difference between a tool chest and a toolbox? So a tool chest is a large box or cabinet for storing tools. In my part of the world, if you buy a tool chest, oh, I dropped my other flyer. It almost always has wheels on it. I think I showed you one at the beginning of the lesson. So these would be what I would call tool chests. I think it says that on there even, doesn't it? This is like the worst lesson ever. It won't focus that close. Anyways, when it's large and has drawers and has wheels on it like these two, I would refer to that as a tool chest. A toolbox is usually a small box for carrying tools with a handle on the top that you can take to different locations. But I do not have a tool chest. I would love someday to have a tool chest. That would be really, really nice. A welder, a machine used to join pieces of metal together with heat. I guess with heat, it's electricity that creates heat that actually fuses the metal together. That might be a new verb for you, to fuse. I think that's the correct verb for a welder. When you weld, you have to wear welding goggles or a welding helmet because you need eye protection because it's so bright it can damage your eyes. So basically, if you have two pieces of metal, you will connect the little clamp to the one piece of metal. You will attach the other piece where you want it, and then you will use the welder to put down a bead of weld onto the pieces, and then they will be permanently together. I do have an old welder, but I don't use it very often. I'm not very adept at welding. Cutting torch. I do not have one of these. A tool that uses a flame fueled by gases like oxygen and acetylene to cut through metal. So we sometimes call it an oxyacetylene torch, or we call it just a torch or a cutting torch. It's different than like the small bottle of propane with the flame at the top. This is connected to two large canisters, and it's usually two different gases that when they mix create a very intense hot flame that's capable of cutting through like relatively thick metal. I've used a torch before. I do not have one. They scare me a little bit, but a cutting torch is a tool that uses a flame to cut through metal. And you can see here, the flame is kind of blue right where it comes out of the tip. And that, I think, is where the flame is the hottest. And that is how you cut through metal. A pressure washer. So a pressure washer is a machine that sprays water at high pressure for cleaning surfaces. I had a pressure washer and it broke. A pressure washer is very nice for cleaning off your vehicle, cleaning off other equipment, cleaning off your driveway. It sprays water, harder than just a normal hose or a hose with a little nozzle on the end. The pressure washer will increase the amount of water that comes out, and it will spray a very, very strong, what was I going to say here? Like flow of water against something. So a pressure washer, a very nice device to have. They can be electric or they can run on a gas engine, and they use the power of the electric motor or gas engine to pressurize the water. Leaf blower, a tool that blows air to move leaves or debris. Now you might think a leaf blower is for just blowing leaves, but it's not. A leaf blower, it's really good for cleaning dust off of other equipment. It's really good for if you have anything where you need to blow lots of air to remove dust, debris, or leaves. A leaf blower is amazing. This is a handheld leaf blower. The leaf blower that I use actually belongs to my son, and it's a backpack leaf blower. So you put the leaf blower on like a backpack, and there's a motor back here, and then you have this large, airflow pipe with lots of airflow coming out. So a leaf blower, a tool that blows air to move leaves or debris. Very handy tool to have, not just for leaves. A socket set, a collection of tool attachments used to turn bolts or nuts. So in particular, A socket set has down here, the first thing is a ratchet. It goes click a click, click a click, or if you flick it, it goes click a click, click a click. So it allows you to tighten a bolt. Onto the ratchet, you will put a socket, or the next things, there are some extensions. So you have the ratchet, you click on an extension, and then a socket, and then you can tighten or loosen bolts. The problem with socket sets is that you eventually lose the sockets and then you have to buy new ones. At least that's what happens to me. I regularly lose the sockets. An air compressor, a machine that creates and supplies pressurized air for tools, cleaning, or pumping up tires. So an air compressor has a tank and it has a pump. The pump is usually electric, but it can also be gas powered. And then it puts air into that tank, lots of air. So it's highly pressurized. And then that compressed air can be used to run a tool like an air gun, like an air wrench, or for cleaning. You can use it like a leaf blower to blow air on things. Or more commonly, you could use it to pump up tires. So very handy. By the way, Mastercraft is the type of tool you can buy at Canadian Tire. So when you go to this store, this is not an advertisement for Canadian Tire, by the way. Their brand of tools, I don't know if you can see here, that socket set is made by Mastercraft. I think Sears used to sell Craftsman. I think that was their brand. But anyways, a wood chipper, a machine that chops branches and sticks into small chips. I wish I had a wood chipper. This would be very handy. Wood chips are very nice to use on a farm. It's nice because if you put wood chips down, then weeds don't grow. So if you have a wood chipper, when you have sticks that fall off the trees or branches, you put them in the wood chipper and it chops them into really small pieces, what we call chips. So a wood chipper, a machine that chops branches and sticks into small chips. I would love to have a wood chipper. A log splitter, a machine that splits logs into smaller pieces for firewood. I do not have a log splitter. We did borrow a log splitter from Jen's parents once to split some firewood, and it's very handy. So it has like a sharp point, and you put a piece of firewood in or a piece of wood in, and then it goes and it breaks that log into smaller pieces. Very, very handy if you have a wood stove or if you burn wood to heat your home. A generator, a machine that makes electricity, often used when power is out. So a generator has a gas engine. When you start the generator, it turns a generator. So it kind of has two names, and that produces electricity. A generator is very handy if the power goes out. If you don't have electricity, then you can start your generator and then you can plug things into the generator. Jen and I have a generator because the flower coolers have to run 24 hours a day during the flower season. So last year, we actually had a power outage for 12 hours. So we ran both coolers off the generator during that time so that we could keep the flowers nice and cold. A drill press, a standing machine that drills holes with precision. So I mentioned earlier, you can have a drill, like a hand drill, like it can be corded or cordless, where you drill holes. But you can also have a drill press, where the drill is mounted in such a way that it makes very precise holes. When I use a normal drill, it wiggles, and I try my best to drill a straight hole. But if I wanted a precise hole in something, I would use a drill press because, yeah, it can't move or wiggle. It just goes straight down, and you just carefully make it go down to drill your hole. A table saw. By the way, I do have a drill press and I love it. And I do have a table saw and I love it. A table saw is a saw with a circular blade mounted in a table for cutting wood. So a table saw is very handy for cutting in the same way a drill press restricts your movement and allows you to drill a straight hole. A table saw restricts the movement of the wood, so it can only go through perfectly straight, and you can cut very precise straight lines. If you were someone who was a woodworker, you would definitely have a table saw. Very handy type of saw to have. A miter saw is a little different. It's a saw that makes angled or cross cuts in wood or other material. So when you put a piece of wood in a miter saw, you can then pull it down, and then sometimes you can pull it down and even pull it forward a little bit. But the saw itself is locked in position. So if you want to cut a perfectly straight line, you can. If you want to cut a 45-degree angle, you can set the saw and then you can cut exactly at that angle. A miter saw is also a good saw to use if you need lots of precision in the cuts that you are making. I also have a miter saw. I don't use all these tools all the time, but when you live on a farm, you need these tools a few times every year, so it's good to have them around. Chop saw or cutoff saw. So this is a saw with a circular blade used to cut through metal or other materials. What makes this different than a miter saw is generally used to cut wood. A chop saw or cutoff saw is usually used to cut metal. So if you're going to make something out of steel, you would use a chop saw. A miter saw has a blade with teeth to cut wood. A chop saw usually has it has a blade, but we would probably call it a cutting disc that is designed to slowly cut through metal. So Jen's dad, who has a welder and likes to make things out of steel, has a nice chop saw so he can cut things to the size that he needs. Bandsaw. This is also known as the most dangerous saw in the world, I think. It's a saw with a long continuous blade that runs in a loop. So it doesn't have a circular blade. It has like a thin metal band with teeth on it that goes in a big loop. So there's two pulleys and then that goes around. This is a nice saw because you can cut things straight, but you can also kind of move things as you cut. The reason I said this is the most dangerous saw is because it's a saw where you get your fingers quite close to the blade when you're working on it. Most other saws are designed so that you are far from the blade when you use it, but the bandsaw, sometimes you're doing some precision cutting and you might be a little closer than you would like to be. A planer. So a planer is a tool that smooths and evens the surface of wood. That was hard to say. A tool that smooths and evens the surface of wood. Saying smooths slower didn't make it easier to say. You can have a hand planer with a little blade in it, but you can also have this, which is what we would call a planer. It's a machine where if you have a piece of wood and it's not quite smooth or even, you run it through a planer and it takes off a very thin layer and eventually your wood is nice and straight and smooth. It's probably the loudest machine in a wood shop. You want me to make the sound? It's like, that's the sound of a planer, but multiply that by 10. A planer is very, very loud. But anyways, a tool that smooths and evens the surface of wood. A jack. So there are a number of different kinds of jacks. A jack is a device used to lift heavy objects like a car. If you have a flat tire, you need to put a jack under your car and then you need to jack your car up. So it's also a verb. On the far end is the common jack that you will find in most cars. The little jack that goes up like this. Not the best jack. The middle jack, I think we call it a dolly jack or a car jack. That one's very nice, but you need to be on a flat surface. And then this end one with the piston that goes up, I think is just called a hydraulic jack. I have all three of these somewhere. Actually, the middle one I think is my son's, but I do have a hydraulic jack. When things need to be lifted, when they're heavy, you use a jack and you pump the jack and it goes and it jacks up the thing that you are trying to fix. Jack stands. So a jack stand is a sturdy support placed under something to hold it safely in the air. Believe it or not, if you jack up your car, when it's in the air, you shouldn't then take the tire off. You should first put some jack stands underneath, because a jack can fail and suddenly go down when it's not supposed to. So jack stands are very handy, a very good thing to have. Or you can just use a large block of wood or a cement block or something like that. But definitely, if you don't own these, I highly recommend them for safety. If you're going to jack something up, put some jack stands underneath so that it is safe to work on. Bench grinder, a machine with rotating wheels for sharpening or shaping metal. So a grinder, there is a power tool called a grinder that you can use. But there's also something called a bench grinder where it is permanently installed on your workbench. This is obviously nice because then you can, if you needed to sharpen a knife, for instance, or sharpen your chisels, you could use a bench grinder to do that. A lathe, a machine that spins material so it can be cut, shaped, or polished. I've never really used a lathe, but if you wanted to take a piece of wood, a lathe would spin that piece of wood, and then you can use different tools to do what this person is doing. Basically, to shape the wood so it looks nice. When you see chair legs on a chair made out of wood, usually the legs are made on a lathe. If you see like a stair rail going up alongside of stairs, usually the spindles are made on a lathe. So a machine that spins material, usually wood, so it can be cut, shaped, or polished. A CNC machine, a computer-controlled machine that cuts, shapes, or drills materials like metal, wood, or plastic with high precision. This guy is making something with his CNC machine. We also sometimes call it a CNC router. You can see that on his machine as well. If you had a piece of wood and you wanted to make a sign that said, "Learn English with Bob the Canadian," so you could put it at the road. I don't know why you would do that. You would use a CNC machine. On a computer, you would create the text, and then the CNC machine would go and it would cut it out. So I have forgotten what CNC stands for. I think it's computer numerical control. CNC means what? Computer numerical control. Okay, so I was remembering. Not the greatest name, in my opinion, for a machine, but that is what a CNC machine would do. A lot of these machines create a lot of dust. Dust is when there are fine particles in the air and it's hard to breathe. You don't want to breathe them in. A dust collector is a machine that collects dust in a workshop. It's not that different than a vacuum cleaner, and it has a large bag on it or inside of it. It sucks air from just out of the air or from the equipment you're using, and it collects it in a safe place. So a dust collector, a machine that collects dust in a workshop. A workbench is, of course, a sturdy table where you work on projects. I would say most people have a workbench somewhere in their house. If they don't have a workbench, they might just have a table or desk where they work on things. But most people will have something like this somewhere. It might be a bit smaller. It's a place where if something is broken, you can take it apart. It's a place where if you're building something, like you can see this person is building a birdhouse. Also, bonus points if you can name the red thing that's on this end of the picture from earlier in the lesson. But a workbench, a sturdy table where you work on projects. A clamp. So obviously this is not a large tool, but it is technically shop equipment. It's a tool that holds objects tightly together so they don't move while working on them. So clamps are very handy. And I think almost every clamp that you can buy is here. There's a pipe clamp, there's a C clamp, there's a hand clamp, all of them. If you glue two pieces of wood together, you need to put a clamp on them to hold it together while the glue dries. Chain hoist. I don't have one of these. I want one of these. A chain hoist is a lifting device that uses a chain and gears to raise or lower heavy objects. So a chain hoist, the one chain is a loop, and when you move that chain, the hook slowly goes up. So there are gears inside, so it makes it easy. So it's like a pulley system in some way. It's geared down, but it amplifies your strength basically. So I would love to have a chain hoist. That would be very cool. I would have to find a safe place to hang it in order to use it. An impact wrench or impact gun, a power tool used to tighten or loosen bolts or nuts with a combination of rotational force and concussive force. So it turns, but if you listen to an impact wrench, there's also a small hammer inside. So it goes drrr, drrr. So it's using, I guess, torque might be the right word, but it's also using the impact of the small hammer inside. I'm not an expert on impact wrenches, but they're really handy. I have a cordless impact wrench. It's so nice for changing tires. Instead of using like a big bar with a socket on the end, you just use your impact wrench and it makes the whole job easier. This is a little smaller than large tool, but this is handy as well. And it's called a multimeter. A multimeter is an electronic measuring tool used to check voltage, current, and resistance in electrical circuits. Very handy. If you have a tool and when you plug it in, it doesn't work, you can check, does this outlet have power? Is power getting to the tool? You can figure out why it's not working. A work light. A portable light so you can see clearly while working in dark or dim areas. A little different than a trouble light, which is a portable light with a protective cage and a hook used to shine light into hard to reach or dark places. So a work light is usually a bit bigger and it might be on a stand like this. If you needed to work on your car, you might point the lights at the spot where you are working so you can see better. A trouble light is then similar, but it's a little more portable and you can hang it. You can see this one has a hook at both ends. That would be really, really handy. So work light, a portable light so you can see clearly while working in dark or dim areas. Trouble light, a portable light with a protective cage and a hook used to shine light into hard to reach or dark places. And then pallet or skid, a flat wooden platform used for stacking and moving goods with a forklift or hand truck or whatever. This isn't really a tool or equipment, but these are handy. Skids are handy. If you have things that are heavy and you need to move them often, I recommend you put them on a pallet or what we call a skid. It just makes it much easier to move later with a forklift or even a tractor. So pallet or skid, a flat wooden platform used for stacking and moving goods with a forklift.